So we've got people come in from Germany, England, Charleston, SC, Canada, Kelowna in British Columbia, Canada. Got someone from California and another from the UK. So we have a variety. As I said before, we do get people coming in from literally all over the world to see these presentations. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my presentation, and then if you got any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and I will tackle them once I've gone through the body of the presentation. Okay? You can also use the question and answer button at the bottom of your screen as well if you want, and I'll also have a look at those too. And we'll see what we can do. We can all learn together because, like, that's nice. Hello from Sweden. Hello to Sweden. Right, so here we go. We've got a lot of UK people here today. Right, so here we go. So this is what we're talking about today, the HeaWea MicroGen. Now, the word HeaWea comes from two other words. One is health, and the other is wearable. Okay, so it's health wearables is what we're talking about today. And MicroGen is because it's a frequency generator, and it's small. So essentially, its name basically tells you an awful lot about the device straight away off the bat. And as I have written here on the screen, it is a combined mini Hulda Clark Zapper, a Bob Beck Blood Purifier, or Bob Beck Zapper, and also a Rife machine. And so you got all this stuff in this tiny, tiny, tiny package here, okay? And with the help of fun things like TENS cables and TENS pads or hand cylinders, you can do all those fun things with it, with the help of software on your Windows-based computer. You can literally wear it around your neck. I don't know whether you can see that on the screen here. There's a lanyard here you can use to wear it around your neck. I understand these days you can probably go onto the website and get some, you know, what we used to call a bum bag or a fanny pack type thing, which you can put on yourself and carry your HeaWea that way. Lots of ways in which it can be done. But let's just talk a bit more about the MicroGen and why it is so absolutely amazing. It's there to relieve various problems. It's there to help people like you to become more energetic and also energy balance. There will be ways in which you can look at energy healing methodologies using the HeaWea MicroGen, and there's ways in which you can look at more physical-based healing. For myself, I spend a lot of my time working with things like candida, yeast, mold, and funguses, because those are the problems which I tend to have more of, as well as, of course, those other pathogens beginning with P that we don't talk about all that much, if you get the drift, okay? When you download the software completely for free, you will have access to over 60,000 programs. You can, as well as your own research, customize your own programs, and the operation is pretty simple for a device of this type. Incredibly portable, incredibly easy to use, and on top of that, there is already like a massive list of positive things that people have said about the device over time. And we also have currently a discount, which is 5% discount, which can be used on the anniversary sales products. But then after April, the discount will only be for the original price. There will be a discount code at the end of this presentation, so before things get too full of drama and excitement, rattle around on your desk and make sure you got yourself a pen and paper to hand, because I'm going to give you that code and then you can write it down and use that to get yourself a reduction in the price on the MicroGen and any peripherals from the HeaWea website. Okay, now the very key features we got here, as well as the fact you can get customizable cases, which are demonstrated and showcased here in the top right-hand side. So you can make it seem more like a fun toy like your mobile phone or your iPad or whatever it is you've got. We also have the fact it's very quick to learn. So if you struggle with technology, you won't struggle with this too much. Very easy to operate. Even if you're someone who's got a bad case of arthritis, you're struggling to press lots of little buttons on electronic devices, this one is made easy for you and also more able-bodied people as well. Any software updates are completely free and provided by HeaWea and the HeaWea website, and we get 3 different services in one here. The Hulda Clark Zapper was traditionally used as part of a protocol which was there to help to reduce pathogens inside the body using contact electrodes and a certain particular amplitude and frequency And you can do that with the HeaWea MicroGen. The Bob Beck Blood Purifier was a device which was designed to put currents through the veins in the wrist, and therefore to reduce toxicity, biological toxicity within the blood as a form of like, I can't remember, like a form of like semi-dialysis type experience. And I've run the HeaWea MicroGen using the Bob Beck Blood Purifier mode, and have had a sense of great clarity as fresh blood started flowing through my fingers. I could physically feel it happening, and so therefore I'm pretty sure that, you know, this stuff does what it says on the tin, you know, within reason. You know, as you carry on experimenting and learning this stuff, you'll work out for particular problems what the benefits are, what you need to work alongside it, and what, you know, specific limitations are, taking into account the problems you're dealing with, of which there aren't that many because it's a very versatile device. And then, of course, there's standard, regular Rife frequency therapy, which is still using the database and using the frequency sets within it. And I've had some amazing experiences of killing off large quantities of fungus that way. And so it was actually really rather effective for what I've used and the way I've used it for. Okay, we've got two different power modes. One is high power, which has the cable with the silver or white terminals, and the other one has gold, like this one here that I've got in my hand, and that's for low power. And low power means that you can actually use the contact electrodes on different parts of the body, which you would not normally be able to do with the silver electrodes, okay, when you wouldn't normally be able to do with a regular Rife machine. And that's one of the things that makes this quite so important and quite so powerful and amazing. Right, sorry, let's go back into slideshow. Right, next, you've only got one button, just one single button. You can do zapping and Rife therapy delivered by the contact methods. We normally use TENS pads, but you can also use hand cylinders, conductive gloves and socks and bands which go around your limbs. And so there's lots of ways in which this can actually be used. This really is rather amazing. Okay, now we're getting on to some of the fun stuff, the more technological side of things. Because when you open up the HeaWea software, you'll see there's these 4 buttons at the bottom. And one thing you'll notice is that one of them has got a yellow spot and the rest have got white spots. Can you see that? Okay. Now, the yellow spot is to be used with the gold electrode cable because that's the low power. So therefore, you could then have your TENS pads on your face, on your neck. You could benefit from frequency-specific microcurrents. And there's frequency sets for that within the database, which you'll then load up to the HeaWea MicroGen via the included USB cable. You can see I've got mine on charge on my computer right now. And you can see the 5 little lights on the device itself. Quite simply to set it up, couldn't be easier. Plug your USB cable into the USB port. It's a C-type cable, so you may be able to use some of the cables you've got with your other electronic devices, provided, of course, that they are C-type USB chargers, and plug it into your computer. Okay, you can see where the charging port is on the HeaWea MicroGen, on the underneath, beneath its little rubber seal, which is there so that you don't get any dust in the components when it's at rest. It'll already come with a very good charge and its built-in battery, but you can always top it up if you want to when you receive it. Now, when in operation, it can run all day, okay? I mean, we're talking about literally up to 24 hours. So you can have one particular frequency set or a chain of frequency sets and keep them running continually throughout the day and into the evening if you wanted to make sure you're getting a nice long and efficient treatment time, which is very good for more persistent infections. Because what you wouldn't want to do is just do 1 or 2 doses, sessions. You'd want to do it for as long as you can. So it can also be used overnight. Some people suggest only using the low power cable for that, but I'm not too sure if that's necessarily important. And for that, you can either have the TENS pads or the gloves right wrist to left ankle, or you can have them either side of your abdomen or either side of a problem area. So that's essentially the contact method for zapping and frequency therapy. Right, as I mentioned, you got your 2 different types of cables. The silver cable is going to be the one you're going to use mostly. So when you place your order, it might be worthwhile getting yourself an extra silver cable, just in case it gets, a bit worn down. I don't think it will, but just in case. So zapping, blood purifier, Rife therapy, and of course, when you want to do frequency-specific microcurrents, you can do that too. Now, FSM has got its own specific benefits for cellular regeneration, as well as tackling more complex, sensitive parts of the body as well. Silver cables, you don't ever use that above the shoulders, above the neckline. And these are the various different other ways in which you can deliver the contact method. Hand cylinders, for those who prefer the Hulda Clark style, they can be quite good. I frequently watch TV as well as use hand cylinders as well myself, so that's brilliant. And these various different bands you can see on the bottom left-hand side, as well as the socks, they're very good for use in bed, as well as the gloves and tense pads maybe during the day or when you're on a bicycle ride and you need to have your therapy whilst you're cycling, as I have done before myself. Okay, now let's have a look at the software. What you can see here is a screen dump of the HeaWea MicroGen software. You can see I've done a search on the top corner for the word Candida, because I tackled Candida for myself. And then there's 1, 2, 3, 4 different Candida sets. I've double clicked on each of them and they've appeared on the right hand programs pane. You can also click on them and click the central arrow, because if you do that, it will move that set into the programs box. So you can then take those programs you've loaded up and then load them directly into the HeaWea MicroGen using the USB cable. Okay, it's only for Windows compatible machines. So you can't do this using an Apple Mac. I've understood there is some software you can download onto an Apple Mac which will make it emulate Windows, but I don't know much about that. Okay, so you can just get yourself a cheap second-hand laptop or a refurbished laptop off eBay, sometimes costing as little as £50, and that will be fine, because the HeaWea software is incredibly small, doesn't take up that much room on your hard drive, and so long as you've got good functional USB ports on the computer itself, you can use the device, not a problem. One-touch access to Hulda Clark Zapping, Bob Beck Blood Purification, and of course your FSM. There we go, there's the buttons there. High power cable is the one I tend to use for the most part when I'm not zapping or blood purifying, because high power cable is the one which deals with the destruction of most pathogens inside the body. For the whole body configuration, you need to have tense pad on the back of the right wrist and at the outside of the left ankle, and that will do the vast majority of the body. But you can have them either side of your abdomen if you're in a pinch, still need some work there. Now, if you're just thinking about Hulda Clark Zapping or Bob Beck Blood Purifying, simply plug in your cable, attach your contact mode, and all you have to do is to click the right button and the frequencies will be loaded up. The Zapper program will last for 63 minutes. So if you want to do a very long zapping session, you will have to then turn your machine back on, because the HeaWea MicroGen will turn itself off after it's done the 63 minutes. Because that's 7 minutes on, 20 minutes off, 7 minutes on, 20 minutes off, and 7 minutes on, which is what the wonderful Hulda Clark recommended. If you're going to use Zapper real hard, you might want to even do a 4-hour session, in which case you'll have to carry on turning the machine on after it's been turned off, after each 63-minute cycle. Okay? You also need to select the power level, and on the display of the HeaWea MicroGen, there is 5 little green lights. Each one represents a power level. 5 lights is the highest level, and 1 light is the lowest level. For Hulda Clark Zapping, you can just have it on level 1, because that's low enough voltage and also sufficiently powerful. For rifing, you tend to go for 3, usually. You've got the 4 and 5 in case they're required, really, but you shouldn't really need to do much more than level 1 and level 3 for the most part. So level 1 for zapping and blood purification, and level 3 for Rife applications. So there you can see a picture of the MicroGen with its power button and power lights. Whenever you start the MicroGen, you will always start at power level 1, which is great, which is basically like the bottom line, 10 volts, all you really need for most things. And then all you need to do is to hold it down and then press it a few times until you got 3 lights lit. And then that will essentially do what you require. So it's minimal in terms of your actual controls. You need to know what it means to have pressed the button and turn it on. You need to know what it means to have cycled through the various different, power levels. But apart from that, and making sure your cable is plugged in properly, you don't really know how to worry about it. You don't have to worry about that. Okay, so you can work at 10 volts, 20 volts, 30 volts, 40 volts, or 60 volts, or, you know, at the lower level, 5, 10, 15, 20, and 30. So an incredibly tiny device and capable of incredibly high voltage when required. You really only need to use level 1 and level 3 for most things. Now, when you're doing rifing, and rifing is brilliant because it can be used to tackle the actual things which is causing the problem. The amoeba, the yeast, the mold, the funguses, the candida, the squiggly little things you don't want to have inside you. Okay? You set up the hardware as we've just described. You choose your silver cable because that's the one for high power. Open up the software, search for your condition. Okay? It might even be worthwhile searching the forums for frequency sets which could be of use to your condition, or hold a conversation with another trainer. And then everything will start to make sense with the passage of time as you work out which one is right for yourself. I have even heard of some people getting out their dowsing pendulum and selecting the right frequency sets out of a list just based upon dowsing. Different people would approach this in a different way. And I know that for some of my conditions, there are some frequency sets which experience demonstrates seems to work really rather well. Okay, so you can have just one frequency set, or you can, just like I showed you in the previous slide, provide a chain, namely a load of frequency sets to go in. Then the MicroGen will just cycle through them. And I'll explain more about that as we move forward. There's a picture of the green arrow in the middle of the screen, which you click in order to create your chain. So bear that in mind. Candida chain, using the 4 most effective frequency sets which I found for it. I'm still doing more experimentation with my body to work out which other sets will be useful, but you know, that's part of the journey of getting into this stuff. Okay, right. Now, what you can see here at the bottom is something quite interesting. You see where it says frequency duration 180. All right, and I put a little red box around that. That is 180 seconds. So each frequency that's going to be run throughout the chain will run for 3 minutes, being 180 seconds, which is essentially the average. You know, that's mostly what most people would do. You can type in another number and increase that or reduce that as you see fit, depending on how your body reacts. If you get a bad Herxheimer reaction, maybe you want to lower it down to 120 seconds. If you're not getting a Herxheimer reaction from that, and you don't think there's been enough killing because nothing's really happened in your body, maybe you'd want to increase it a little. And to the right, then we have another button which has that a bit like the Amazon on the arrow, a bit like the arrow on the Amazon logo, but upside down. Okay, and that's currently showing you that it will cycle through the chain. It will run through your chain or your frequency sets, and then it'll go back to the beginning and it'll start it over again. That's what that one particular symbol there with the arrow and the 4 dots means. If you were to click on that again, you would then get another symbol which would suggest it would just run through that frequency set or chain and then stop. So you have choice over how it will operate and run through your frequency treatment sets. So that number there I was talking about there, that's the dwell time. And the one on the right, it's a question of if you want to run through it once or to just carry on looping. I hope that makes sense. Okay, then, so your main task there is to make sure you're using the correct TENS cable, have a suitable contact mode peripherals attached, namely your TENS pads, your hand cylinders, your gloves, whatever it is you prefer for your treatment. And click the correct button, namely either yellow for the yellow cable or white for the silver cable. That's pretty much it. Okay? Now, when we're looking at Blood Purifier, you can use it in 2 different ways. On the left-hand side, we've got 2 particular positions, either side of where the either side of where the circulation goes through, because you've got 2 arteries there, one going into the hand, one coming out of the hand. Okay, so you can have your blood purifier either side, or you can have it in this parallel configuration here. But the idea is to get the blood circulating through between the TENS pads, so you get the benefits of the treatment itself. So for many things, either back of opposing wrists, okay, either side of the problem area, or right wrist to left ankle, or right side of the waist to the left side of the waist. Those are the basic ones that you need to know. You do need to think about this creatively and intuitively. The more you find out about health as a result of reading through various different forums, you get a better idea as to what you should actually be doing. Opposing wrists or holding onto hand cylinders will, to the most part, do the upper body. But you can still get some pathogen control in your legs as well that way, as experience suggests. And I've also had things being killed in my lower digestive tracts, even the ileum, as a result of just using hand cylinders, which was actually quite good. Right wrist to left ankle will basically do the whole thing, pretty much the whole of your body. There may still be some areas that the signal will not be able to get to because of conductivity issues, but it shouldn't really be a serious issue. Then the question is, what other TENS pad positionings could you actually start using? It depends what the problem is, depends where the problem is, and there are some suggestions. These are available online for you to have a look at. You can work on your abdominal area, you can work on the pathogens directly within the front of the abdomen, or you can work on the calves to try and deal with calf pain, problems with the shins, problems with your lower back, where to place them for sciatica, the upper back, which I really need to start working on pretty soon, so I'm going to take note of that myself. Elbows, because we often get infections and problems there as well, and of course your hips and buttocks, knees, rear thighs, quadriceps, and positionings for your shoulder. So that's a bit of an overview of some possibilities that you could actually do. Now, I mentioned this thing called FSM before, but what actually is it and what could it actually do? There are certain conditions that are very specific to frequency-specific microcurrent methods, and you can just type it into the search box, and then you'll see all the things which come up, and you can search through that and see whether any of that is right for you. Remember, TENS cable with gold electrodes. Okay, that's the one you'd want to use for FSM. So it's worthwhile going into the software and typing that in just to see what turns up. If you haven't yet downloaded the software from HeaWea.com, then I would strongly advise you to start doing that and playing with it. Now, in this next slide, you can actually see the woman on the bottom right-hand corner, sitting back, nice and relaxed, eyes closed. She's even got the TENS pads and the HeaWea connections either side of her temples. Now, what she would be doing would be using the gold terminals, really, the gold electrode cable. Not necessarily the white one as pictured there, because you can't treat the head if you're using the silver terminal electrodes. You have to use the gold ones. You absolutely have to use the gold ones for that. And you have to have selected the button which has the yellow dot to deliver your frequency-specific microcurrent. It increases ATP, which is the energy of within the cells, by up to 500%. So essentially that can provide extra healing and extra energy and vitality to the body. Relaxes the muscles, relieves aches and stiffness, so it's very good for people who are involved with sports and need to have some variety of sport massage. Encourages natural healing, takes that part of your body which you're trying to treat, and it brings more wellness into it, and it can be used above the neckline. So find a way of fitting this into your life because it is good. All right. Now, we often do a bit of our own research once in a while. Okay, we look online and we see, hey man, this particular frequency I've heard of, or this particular frequency set I've heard of, I'd love to do it. I can't find it on the HeaWea software. What am I going to do? Create it. You create it yourself. Okay, you can then type in the frequency numbers that you want with comma separation, give it a title, give it a description, nice and simple, just through clicking on the programs button or the programs menu button. You can then save it, and it will appear in the programs list as your own special thing. So let's say you want to include some of those solfeggio frequencies or something similar to that. Type them in and see, just see how it works for you, because different people are going to react differently to this. Take into account your own energy system, your own body, and so on and so forth. Play around with it. Okay, this is versatile. It's there to be played around with and to get involved in so that you can do more for yourself. So that's the box which pops up when you want to create a frequency set. Type in a name for it, type in lots of numbers with the commas. Based upon your own research, as you can see, that one particular number there, the 1, 2, 3rd number in the example, it's actually got a decimal point. So you can actually go to quite specific resolution there. And then you just type in the description and you click on the save icon, which looks just like a floppy disk, which nobody uses anymore. That's the 21st century for you, isn't it? But how simple can that be, okay? All right. The wonderful thing about the HeaWe's technology, the HeaWe software, is it is simple. For those of you who've been using, let's say, Spooky 2 before, you may have found that more challenging, more, oh my God. HeaWe is just a lot simpler, a lot more easy to deal with. And if you are feeling adventurous, you want to expand your ability to use the HeaWe MicroGen, go to a website called spooky2tools.com. And then you can find a way of doing things like importing the terrain protocol from Spooky 2, the DH experimental frequencies, which are amazing. You need to shorten them down to just 1 minute or 5 seconds, I think, per frequency. But that is good and that is beneficial. And you can also import other Spooky 2 presets and databases into the HeaWe MicroGen software, thus providing you with the ability to achieve an awful lot more with your device. So it's quite simple. Now the question is, where can you buy your MicroGen from? It's quite simply HeaWe.com. It's a great device, it's a great organization, it's a great company, it's well worthwhile investing in. And when it comes to things like candida, mold, and yeast and funguses, I've had some amazing results already, well, during the time when I've been using it, and it's good. One other thing I will point out is that if you are a Spooky 2 user and you want to get your biofeedbacks, which you've taken on your Generator X or your XM generator with pulse unit, you can save that to your software in Spooky 2 and you can get that imported into your MicroGen as well. There's ways of doing that. I think it's on spooky2tools.com, and that will patch into Spooky 2 software, which will give you the whole of the regular Spooky 2 experience, more or less, for using the MicroGen. Okay, so you can put these things together to try and get some kind of more beneficial result long term. Does that make sense? So that's essentially the bulk of the presentation. That's the majority of that. Now we've got 7 things in the chat. Okay, according to Carol McMahon, FSM should have 4 electrodes, 2 for the organ, 2 for the problem. How does this work for HeaWe? You don't need to do what Carol McMahon has suggested. It doesn't matter. And it does actually do its job with just 2 electrodes. So there's no point in worrying about 4. I mean, different people have approached the subject with lots of, the subject of electronic medicine, electronic healing, from lots of different points of view. And some people have jumped to some conclusions and some have jumped to other conclusions. But everything is just like here for you, all in one go, and a one-stop shop, which is for HeaWe itself. Okay, next question. Could you please repeat what is the difference between the Zapper and Blood Purifier? Thank you. Okay, well, the Blood Purifier comes from the Bob Beck protocol, because he had this 4-step thing of like drinking water that's treated with ozone, using the Zapper, colloidal silver, and also using a magnetic pulsar. But the Blood Purifier is something which works on your circulation through one wrist. It's not something you do on both wrists at the same time, but on the soft underbelly of your wrist. You have 1 pad there and 1 pad there, or 1 there and 1 there. And as the blood circulates through your arm every 7 minutes, that's pretty much all the blood in your body that'll receive the treatment. So if you got something like a fungus problem, there's some fungus in your blood, it'll be reduced or deactivated to a certain extent as a result of running Blood Purifier on your wrist. Whereas the Zapper has a different protocol entirely, and it provides you with 7 minutes worth of treatments, followed by a 20-minute break, followed by 7 minutes worth of treatments. And that you have on either side of the body. So either left and right of your abdomen, okay, your right wrist to left ankle, or on hand cylinders, left and right. And you just sit there for the duration of it all, and it will help to reduce some of the pathogenic loads within the body. The very first time I did a really, really long Hulda Clark session using Spooky's equipment, my digestive system dumped loads of toxic rubbish that had been held in there by its electrostatic charge, even to the point whereby my neighbors next door thought that a sewer had broken open, because it was all like this rot of ages that accumulated inside me, and running Hulda Clark zapping for 4 hours helped to dramatically reduce it. All right, but when I did the blood purifier, I could feel fresh blood circulating around my fingers, and my body felt healthier in a different way. So these two things operate on the body in very different ways for different specific purposes. The general hypothesis within complementary health is to reduce pathogens, increase nutrition, and reduce toxicity within the body in order to try and restore wellness. That's essentially what a lot of it is about. So if you're operating on general pathogens inside the body, general pathogens inside the blood, that could assist in the development of more wellness. Okay, that's just the hypothesis of complementary health. What you make of it is up to you. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a qualified medical practitioner, so I'm just merely telling you as a result of all my reading. Right, next question. John mentioned in an earlier Zoom that he was working on a remote device for the MicroGen. I don't have any updates on that, but it'll be fun when it comes out. I mean, the wonderful thing about Spooky 2, HeaWea, is that it is innovative. They are very innovative. They know what they're trying to create. They're perpetually checking, the forums and emails and seeing what people are thinking, so that they can develop new positive things for people within this, the particular genre of complementary therapies that we're involved with here. Okay. Is there any way an adapter to connect HeaWea MicroGen with Spooky 2 Scalar? Not that I'm aware of. I'm pretty sure that someone will MacGyver up something that could do that, or maybe there's another forum somewhere which will teach people how to do that. But I don't know what, off the top of my head, I don't know what particular waveform the scalar itself requires. So I wouldn't recommend at this stage directly connecting your MicroGen to your scalar. Could I please repeat what I said about patching into the Spooky 2 software? I had audio issues. Okay, you go to the website spooky2tools.com, and there's things which you can download there which can be of use. And one of them somewhere, I'm not sure if it's on that website or another one, is a patch which you can download into your Spooky 2 software, which will then give you this tiny little MicroGen symbol at the bottom right, so you can then just go straight from Spooky 2 software to your MicroGen, which will possibly make life easier in the general flow of work when you're working with MicroGen, that little bit easier and quicker under some circumstances. Do we hold the hand cylinders directly? Yes. All right, now in the old-fashioned days of the original old-fashioned Hulda Clark Zapper, they didn't have the same waveform and the same power that we have with HeaWea MicroGen. And so to avoid negatives, they would take some kitchen towel, not laboratory paper, but kitchen towel, and wrap one layer around a copper hand cylinder. And that's how it was done, and they would be wetted. And it's an okay method, but it's also rather inconvenient, and it gets rather soggy. And so you just hold your hand cylinders, enjoy it. If you feel a bit of a zing, then that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. Don't worry about it. Someone mentioned in the Facebook group that Beck mentioned that if you take medications, you should be careful when using blood purifier. Would I agree with that? Yeah, well, Bob Beck also said you shouldn't eat garlic. He may have designed or innovated some fantastic devices, but on the other hand, he was a bit of a person who knew very little and wanted to make himself seem like he knew an awful lot. So trying to terrify people was one of the things he would do. So don't worry about that. I think he's talking rots there, to be quite honest. Okay. Also, if a person has never used Spooky 2 products and, of course, has not performed the terrain protocol, in order to properly use the MicroGen, can they still use the MicroGen and get the same effects? Well, what some people do is to run the blood purifier every day, probably morning and evening, for a couple of weeks, or maybe or just a week maybe, and use that as a substitute for the terrain itself, because that will be reducing some nasty things inside the body, and therefore the body will find it easier to deal with other stuff using regular treatments. So although the terrain protocol on Spooky 2 is great, I have it running on remote permanently for myself because I think I need to. But you can actually potentially do without it just by relying upon HeaWea itself. Okay, so it's good. You don't always have to do terrain. It's recommended to make the terrain, the landscape of the body, that little bit smoother and easier to accept further treatments. But give blood purifier a go and give zapping a go, and seeing how that improves your well-being for maybe a couple of weeks, and then get straight into the killing of your yeast, mold, funguses, parasites, and disgusting biological things that all of us humans tend to carry, and some of us carry more of it than others. All right. Do you suggest sticking to the basic category, as there seems to be a lot of medications in addition and essential oils and herbs on some of the programs? How do you know which ones to select? To a certain extent, there's a certain level of trial and error in this. All right, all frequency therapy has to be considered to be an experimental treatment in some respects, within some limits. So yes, you have to do trial and error and have to see how it works for yourself. Because I personally am not going to make a decision about my wellness based just upon what some lunatic said on the internet. I don't do that. I would listen to what they say. I'll try and work out whether that's something I can experiment with. Then I would work out how to experiment on it, work out what my duration to experiment with it would be, and I see whether that is genuinely what my body seems to require, using the technology at my disposal. That would be my approach. But if you've got a particular health problem and you're looking to find just anything which can just improve it bit by bit, then your research will probably have already led you to essential oils, herbs, vitamins, minerals, pharmaceuticals, whatever. A certain number of them will be either in the Spooky 2 database or it will be in the HeaWea.com software. Are you with me? So then you have to work things out. And I know that when you're really, really suffering or struggling and you just want to get relief now, you know, it can feel really difficult to have to go through that exploratory process. But the more research you do and the more experimentation you do, the more you learn what you should be, you know, what you can do to help achieve change and progress within your own life. Okay, as I say, I passed lumps of fungus this big as a result of using the MicroGen. Okay, it's been staggering, really. Just a minute. Question. I'm a little confused about when you search the programs, the difference between the starred programs and the non-starred programs. Also, what's the difference in protocol between running in MicroGen and Rife frequency, and how do you run these differently? Well, the starred programs are the ones which the community suggests could be most effective. So if you choose the starred programs, the possibility of you getting some kind of wellness result is potentially higher. Okay? Now with you, it might be different. There may be other sets out there which your body reacts better to. So again, experiment, but maybe start off with the ones with the stars beside them and see how that helps. Okay? You're essentially you're trying to become knowledgeable in how to treat yourself. So you've got to learn and you've got to experiment. And that's essential. Now the difference protocol between running in the MicroGen and Rife frequency. Okay, well, Rife frequency is run with the cable with the silver electrodes, not the gold electrodes. I personally would typically run from right wrist to left ankle or either side of my abdomen. And I would just set it up, set up the software, set up the hardware, set it going, get the frequencies into my MicroGen and run them. And leave it going all day. and see how I feel during the day and the next day and so on and so forth. Maybe charge it up overnight, start again first thing the next day. For Rife frequencies, where should we place the pads? Right wrist to left ankle, or either side of the abdomen, or either side of the problem area? Is there a way to lock the MicroGen so that when using it while sleeping, we don't inadvertently press the power button and consequently turning it off? Off the top of my head, I don't know. I don't think so as of yet, but there may be another, generation of it at some point, and there will be some changes and improvements or whatever. But if you're worried about that, it would be worthwhile just arranging your sleeping so that it's less likely you're going to turn over onto it. Because doing overnight sessions, whether it's on Spooky 2, on Contact, or whether it's on HeaWea MicroGen on Contact, has its challenges. I don't deny that, but you've got to work out the logistics of it yourself. I mean, when I went at Christmas time to see my parents, and I stayed over in their place for our Christmas feasting, I took my MicroGen with me, and I placed it just on the edge of the bed. All right, and I paid quite close attention to how I was sleeping, so I wouldn't roll over onto it or whatever. You know what I mean? All right, now, does the Spooky 2 and the MicroGen have basically the same programs other than Terrain missing in the MicroGen? Well, Terrain doesn't have to be missing in the MicroGen because you can upload it from spooky2tools.com. Okay. Many of the programs are the same, but you can't take your XM or your Generator X with you when going for a walk around the city. But you can with a HeaWea. So therefore, using the HeaWea fills in that particular gap in your schedule when you would not normally be able to do contact rifing. Okay. So yeah, you might think to yourself, well, I can still, I've still got Spooky 2. I can just run remote programs, and that will be okay. Well, remote will give you the benefits of remote, which is real, but on the other hand, the contact would have more power for more direct stuff. So you've got to work out what particular tool you need to use for what purposes. I often do contact sessions when I've got like 3 or 4 remotes going in the background anyway. That's just the way in which I roll. Could you talk about using the gold cables and how and what you would use them for? Okay, I personally would use the gold cables for problems when I've got issues with my muscles, issues when I've got problems in a part of the face which requires work, dental pain. I would use that for general regeneration of the body in various different ways. Depends upon what's going wrong with me at the time. We look to these tools to try and help us to get us back on track. Any average length of time to run treatments? Easy days or weeks to see results? I would say a minimum of 1 week would probably make most sense, actually. And treatments in the morning, treatments in the evening, that sort of thing. Do you have to use the USB cable and the TENS pads hooked up for the programs to transfer to the MicroGen? You have to have the USB cable hooked up, but you don't have to have the TENS pad in order to get the programs from the software into your MicroGen. Okay, that's not necessary. Can we use the hand cylinders for the Rife frequencies? Naturally, yes, easily. Some people say you can use HeaWea to imprint. I haven't experimented with that myself, but the method for water is to have TENS pads either side of a glass containing water, and then you just run your program to the pads. The pads aren't touching the water, they're either side of the glass. And some people get good results that way. Please explain how to update firmware in MicroGen. Well, firmware update instructions are there. Read them. Now, when I updated my firmware, it gave me a selection of different ports to choose, and I had to work out which one would work on it, and it took me trial and error to do. But I did click the update firmware button like that, and here it's got COM1 and COM5. We can then, well, okay, then it didn't do it, but never mind. See if I can try that again. Right, there we go. It's communicating, it's trying to work things out, it's trying to update the firmware right now. So you just choose the right port and click the right button. With the passage of time, it will essentially do things. Okay, I hope that's all been very helpful for you. I think we've done most of the question and answer sections now. Wonderful. I mean, that's one thing I really like about the Spooky 2 community and the HeaWea community is everyone's coming from very different disciplines and different backgrounds, so we can learn from people's points of view. Some are medics, some are engineers, some are just regular users who've had some fun experiences and really want to share it because they're excited about it. And that feeling of everyone discovering different things along their journey and then just like entering it into the forum and into the Facebook page is just wonderful. The quantity of resource which is out there for people to search from, Google from, and Facebook search from is just like pretty astounding. So, I'm really grateful to be a part of this community for all the stuff which I've learned.